Everybody, welcome to the Management Committee for today. What day is it? The June 8th. Thank you very much. With that, I will call for a motion for approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Pacheco, seconded by Marcy. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously. We'll now move on to the approval of the May 25th minutes of the Management Committee. Everybody's gotten them in advance and has had a chance to look over them. Are there any changes, additions, corrections? Seeing none, then I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Gonzalez. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously. We also have non-consent business today. The first one is item 2022-162. It's the labor agreement with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades District Council 82. And we've got Marcy, I believe, here who'll give us the report on this. Welcome,
Good
Marcy.
afternoon. Thank you very much. Marcy Cordes, Chief Labor Relations Officer. Today we have a presentation on our recent settlement with the Painters Union. The painters contract expired on April 30, 2022. The union represents 5 employees who perform maintenance work primarily at the Metro plant with environmental services. The party reached a tentative agreement on May 26, and the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades ratified the agreement on May 26 as well. As you know, per council policy, we follow the outside trades agreement negotiated between the local, in this case local 455, and representatives of the local construction industry. The hourly total package increase is $2.50 for year 1 and $2.30 in years 2 and 3. The total first year package is going to be $66.69 for all wages, benefits, and paid time off. Under the Thrive Lens analysis, stewardship, the settlement falls within the financial parameters established by the council. And under prosperity, we believe the agreement represents a fair and reasonable wage settlement and demonstrates our commitment to investment in our employees. The labor agreement was negotiated within the parameters set by this committee. And the proposed action today is that the council authorize the regional administrator to enter into an agreement with International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, Local 455, effective May 1, 2022 through April 30 of 2025.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No questions at this time. So the proposed action is that we move ahead, authorizing the regional administrator to enter into an agreement with the IUPAT, how about that, Trades Council 82. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Marcy, seconded by Barber. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously, so thanks, Marcy.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. And we have another item before us today, and it is item 2022-164, ratification of declaration of emergency for information services staffing. And we've got Craig and we've got Jody here to give us a report on this. So, welcome.
Good afternoon. I just thought I would introduce myself. I haven't had the privilege to address this group in person before. I'm Craig Bantz. I'm the CIO and I help lead the IT department here at the council. So thank you for the opportunity.
Great.
So I want to give you a little bit more color to this than I think most emergency declaration ratifications have, because I think it's a bit of a unique circumstance. So I'm going to break it down into 4 quick pieces. It'll only take a couple of minutes. I want to tell you a little bit about why IS, the kind of IT department here is known as Information Services, matters and is relevant to the safety and well-being of our communities, a little bit about the challenges we're facing and thus why we declared an emergency we're asking to be ratified, the causes for those challenges, and our strategies, near-term and long-term, to address them. So, a little bit about our background. IT here, in addition to running all the things you might expect, email and websites, et cetera, also serves a critical infrastructure role. So our technology systems underpin things like safety control systems, police systems, rail control systems. You can imagine really essential for the operation of the council. And IT maintenance is much like physical asset maintenance. If we fall behind on maintaining these critical systems, we increase our risk portfolio across all the services we deliver. These have been complicated by many pandemic-related issues, chip shortages, getting equipment, all those logistics have come to the fore for us in IT recently. So we have two challenges that intersect that part of our mission. And I'll say, just as a quick aside, I think IT does a lot more than just critical infrastructure. It can offer transformative value and stuff. I look forward to talking to this group at some point about that. Just focus on this kind of critical aspect first. Okay, so two challenges. One, over the last 12 months, the IS vacancy rate, so the number of vacant positions in the IT department has risen to 25% of the department. We are down about 30 positions, which is substantial for us. And second, our loss rate, the rate at which we're losing staff, is in excess of the rate that we are adding staff. So that's not a very sustainable arrangement, if that makes sense. So what are the causes of these things? So to speak to losses, there are, a number of factors at play. One is deferred retirements during kind of peak COVID restrictions, if this makes sense. The joke in IS was, as soon as I can take a cruise, I'm gonna retire. And so we just experienced kind of a couple of years of deferred retirements at kind of concentrated moments of time. Another element is new positions. We have some strategic investments, mostly kind of high return on investment opportunities where we need some staff. Something that Mr. Gonzalez has spoken a great deal about is, investing in our ERP systems and driving efficiencies that way. Some of our challenges are filling new positions to make that vision a reality. So some are things that were not previously occupied, and some of those vacancies are over a year old that we're trying to fill. Honestly, another dimension is a compensation disparity with what we're paying to market conditions. Our average person is leaving for a 20% or greater raise. And lastly, the workplace flexibility and the environment or nature of how it is working in our IT department is quite different. Our department is a well-compensated department with really exceptional professionals, but the department is treated, despite being mostly exempt, more along the lines of hourly staff, and that's a little atypical for our staff or for the IT profession. So most of our folks are leaving for private sector opportunities where the kind of relationship's a little different. So those are kind of contributing factors to our low fill rate for IT positions at the moment. Another element is the rate at which we are bringing people on board. And one of this is not unique to the council, one contributing factor, and that's just simply the market is extremely tight for IT labor and labor in general. And sure, as of the April statistics, there are 2 open positions for every unemployed individual in the country. So, and that's across all professions. And the state, our unemployment rate's only 1.6%. So it's about half the national average, if that makes sense. And IT unemployment typically is about half the national average unemployment rate. So right now we're trending at an unemployment rate in IT of under 0.5%. So there is basically full employment plus in IT. So it's really challenging to attract talent. And honestly, we're just getting out recruited in a lot of dimensions. So our staff are not necessarily seeking positions, but people are reaching out to them and day in and day out saying, oh, we'll pay you more. We'll give you these wonderful benefits, these many advantages. So even though folks are satisfied and engaged, it's hard to pass opportunity knocking on your door, if that makes a lot of sense. So those are kind of challenges is, we're short on staff. Those are some contributing factors. What are our solutions? Well, we need to both treat kind of the symptoms that present this emergency right now, and we also need to treat the root cause. So for our immediate action, what we have done with the support of the council's leadership, and a great degree of thanks for Mary and George for the support in this, we have declared an emergency, which we're asking to be ratified for temporary staffing resources. So what this will let us do, or what this has let us do, is bring in staff on a temporary basis to augment these critical positions. So these are not council employees, they're contractors on a short-term duration. And that has made a great deal. of progress in catching up on our back maintenance. I'm also very pleased to say of this approximately $4 million that we've asked for in the emergency context, we've committed about a fourth of that. An overwhelmingly majority of that commitment has been to MCUBs. So despite it being an emergency, we're spending a lot of energy in making sure we're reaching out and building relationships with strategic partners in our community locally. And so that has been a really excellent element of this. Kind of midterm, what we intend to do is move away from operating under this emergency declaration and in partnership with Procurement, who's really giving us a lot of excellent support, conduct an RFP, again, very aggressively focused at bringing a lot of MCUB business to the table for professional staffing. And that'll alleviate the need from a procurement perspective for an emergency declaration, but that's still kind of treating the symptoms of our general staffing shortage in IT. Long term, we're really looking at some strategies to up our game in recruiting. In partnership with HR, we're hiring a recruiting service, an external service with expertise in kind of the market dynamics that exist right now. We're also hiring a dedicated recruiter resource in the HR department that'll support IT specifically.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat, what role is that again you're hiring?
So the HR department, and in partnership with them, they are hiring a position to recruit IT positions, if that makes sense.
That's dedicated.
That's dedicated to IT positions. And I think that will allow that individual to really focus on the dynamics of our market and build relationships with, colleges, universities, other employers, leverage LinkedIn more meaningfully to find candidates for us. So we'll kind of start with an agency to do that work, and we'll move to a council employee to support that work in the long run. Because to be frank, to fill this kind of vacancy, it's probably a multi-year initiative for us. First we gotta turn the tide, then we gotta fill in the gap. All right, and we're gonna be doing a compensation and classification study. So what that study will do is it'll look at, do we have the right kind of roles in IT, or are they mirroring market roles and ladders from entry-level positions to senior ones, and assessing whether or not those positions are appropriately compensated. It's been over 10 years since we've done an assessment like that, and so there's probably a strong likelihood that our compensation and job family structures have deviated from market. And lastly, we're kind of going to lean into some new recruiting strategies. Instead of just getting outcompeted with people coming to steal our folks, we'd like to start stealing some other people's folks. So new recruiting strategies will be a key part. Anyway, that's a little bit of background. Can I tackle any questions on that?
Does anybody have any questions at this point? Councilmember Gonzalez?
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions. So how long is this temporary staffing interim position or situation?
Yeah, so we aspire to leverage the emergency declaration just as long as it takes us to complete a formal RFP solicitation for staffing resources. So I think we're projecting around 6 months with procurement to conduct that.
Yeah, Madam Chair and council members, I'll talk just a little bit about the emergency expenditures under the council's expenditures policy allows for emergent situations. This is atypical, but this is an atypical situation as Craig had talked about, some of the challenges with staffing, some of the challenges with looking at the work with the mass retirements and looking at providing this service differently and better. And so there is an RFP on the street to have some on the street, which means we're advertising, to have a solicitation for an as-needed service provider to come in and fill these positions. But until that RFP process is complete, we have to deal with the situation. And our procedures and state law allow the council to declare an emergency, which means we can go directly, once an emergency has been declared by our regional administrator, we can get services immediately available to, typically it's a pipe that breaks, right? To get the contractor working to make sure that there isn't a gap with services being provided. And so one of the requirements of that is to ratify through the committee of origin, which is the management committee, for this project, because IS is a regional services, to bring it forward to you, to let you know the situation, and then to approve it. And then if the cost exceeds what has been approved, they'll have to come back. But at this time, it is an emergent situation. It's certainly unique compared to what we've seen before, but we need to get resources secured to prevent health, safety, and the welfare, any exposure for the general public.
Yep, Councilmember Pacheco.
Madam Chair, members, is the declaration cover consulting contracts and recruiting individuals? So it's a business or individuals? Are you doing both at the same time? I mean, how does that work?
The contract as it is structured right now focuses on bringing in individual resources to backfill vacancies we have. We do aspire to bring in a recruiter as as one of those individual resources, if that makes sense, but it's not a contract for a recruiting agency to provide professional services. It's more to hourly contract with an individual to do recruiting would be included.
Madam Chair, yeah. At this time, do you look at contracting for services as well?
Yeah, such as outsourcing or something that is not covered by the emergency declaration, but is something we're considering as part of our go-forward strategy.
Okay, the reason I'm just asking is that it's, sometimes there's an opportunity in all of these things. And if we don't have to go through a lot of hoops and stuff to get some diverse vendors in here or other folks, this may be an opportunity, and I just want to, just asking that.
Yes, I think we see that opportunity. Thank you.
Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to follow up on your questions because this was sort of rolling through my head too. So I'm in private life. I'm a consultant and not an IT. So I'm not. But I think that just watching the changing nature of business, especially for professional services, that looking at a mix of hiring people and then also having access for people for special projects or some of these sorts of things where you've got a mix of sort of that consulting model and the actual professional employee model might make a lot of sense.
I think there is a lot to investigate there, and I strongly agree. We have historically not engaged professional services as part of our regular IT operations, and that is very atypical to the market approach, where you see anything from a 20 to 30% of the need in IT being addressed typically by professional services.
Councilmember Musa.
Thank you. As we try to fill this emergency situation, can we prioritize diversity hiring and make sure that we intentionally recruit from disadvantaged communities?
Absolutely, that has been a big priority of ours in IS, and we have significantly increased the diversity of the positions we are filling in the last 2 years since I've started. So we've moved from mostly, frankly, hiring white men to mostly hiring people of color and women. So that continues to be a focus, and so does quality the quality of the candidates continues to be a focus. So even though we're in need, we're not reducing our aspirations.
Thank you.
Additionally, Madam Chair, Councilmember Musa, can you talk a little bit, I know you know better than I do the detail, because there's multiple different firms being hired under this emergency declaration. But there is some firms that were specifically chosen because of their skill set and also because they were registered as underutilized businesses or MCUBs in the directory.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we do need to contract with multiple firms because of the diversity of the skills we require and the volume we're trying to fill. So there's no one-stop shop for our needs right now, but we've invested really significant energy in making sure that we are emphasizing MCUBs or underutilized business is in all of our contracting under the emergency declaration. And I will say, typically, we are seeing goals in the, maybe 10% of a spend on an IT contract would be for an MCUB. We are right now tracking more than 90% spend with MCUBs. So we are significantly spending on this emergency declaration with MCUBs.
That is what I wanted to
Super happy with this.
Did you have something to do? Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, in addition to that, I just encourage us to look at other business models as we consider contracting and outsourcing at my day job.
we are moving our financial services from in-house to a contract. We're contracting out to, outsourcing to a firm that is Black woman-owned, and they are not a traditional business, they're a cooperative. And so we look at different forms of kind of economic modules out there to support folks.
Thank you. Great.
Any other questions? I have a few. So following up on the outsourcing, so you said that this won't include outsourcing at this time.
This is just for backfill hourly labor at the moment. However, due to the short duration of this, pivot to doing more outsourcing really has to be a multi-year strategy, and is probably best not solved with an emergency declaration, but through an RFP process.
Okay.
But absolutely is something we would like to investigate.
I think so, yep, for that sustainable solution. So a couple of questions. So how long have we known that we're coming to this moment? How long has people been noticing the red flags, that gut feel that this is not going well and it's not gonna get fixed? How long has this been going on?
A little over a year.
Okay. It is the first time I'm hearing about it, and I'm sure, and my understanding is this will be managed today, but the council won't have to review this. So how much well, I'm sure the chair is probably briefed on this, I'm not sure, but I think it's a big enough deal where, you know, the full council in some way should be made aware of this. And, you know, I understand the how we got here. I think the part that for me, and in my role on the council in various ways that emergency decisions come to us, the ones that I've kind of chirped about a little bit, we find out at the last minute. We then don't have much say. I know we're policy and those big decisions, we don't want to get in your day-to-day, that's other people's jobs. But I think that I've been asking for some time now, if we could get some heads up, even as chairs or the leadership group, that things like this are coming. I think that it would be wise to involve us sooner, because this is not how I like to be handling this, but I understand the situation you're in. So there's that. I also, curious too, why are we $1 under 4 million? Is there something magic that happens at 4 million?
Madam Chair, there is no magic at 4 million.
Okay,
That was the estimate of IS with
Okay.
the work and the number of contracts based on the need when that emergency declaration form was routed for approval internally. The only magic, if you will, is that over 175,000, a business item to ratify that emergency needs to be presented. And because this is regional administration, it starts in management.
Yeah.
And so the 175 triggers the business item.
okay. And then where are we pulling this money from? Is it just coming from a certain budget line, or is it savings from positions we don't have filled, or is it both, or how are we managing this?
For the many downsides of being down 25% of the IT department, the only upside might be argued is the significant salary savings we've accrued. It's just actually in excess of $4 million. So we will just be paying for these costs out of that salary savings.
Okay, and yet you say this is about a 6-month fix.
Yes.
So then, I know you're probably working on the next phase already. I think it'd be nice to let this group know as soon as you can what that next phase or 2 or 3 look like, so that we aren't back here in 6 months from now, because I know it's a tremendous problem. I get it, I really get that part. I have a question too, so if we could just, either, through George to me, and if the committee wants to, via memo, just kind of keep us in the loop as to what's going on. Also, I've heard you say that you're committed to 1/4 of this money already. So what you're doing is the planning. We haven't made any agreements yet prior to the authorization, obviously, right? Or are we kind of out there spending, knowing that the money needs to happen and you're counting on us to do that today, or how does that work?
Madam Chair, committee members, I'll address those questions. And the first one you asked about the update, you will absolutely be the committee approving the recommendation as a result of the procurement. So you'll see that that business item coming forward, because it is expected to be much greater than 500,000. Your second question about approval of contracts already expended, when an emergency declaration, when an emergency happens, and this is definitely not a typical emergency that we see, like a pipe breaking or an emergent situation with fleet down or something else, but the procedure which follows the statutory authority says, once your internal signature authority, it went up to our regional administrator to approve, an emergency has been declared and procurement is authorized to get contracts in place immediately to prevent further risk to the health, the safety, and the welfare of the general public. So there are multiple purchase orders and contracts, and I don't have the number, but there are multiple contracts in place. And then the next phase is to bring the business item to the committee of origin, again, the management committee, to ratify what that emergency was, what information was used to declare an emergency, and then follow up with any questions.
Okay, I understand that. And I guess I'm trying to, define emergency, right? Because I do like that, because we've got one of these on our agenda tonight for the pipe break in Brooklyn Park, right? And those are typically things that you don't, oh, we're gonna have a pipe break this year. We don't know, right? They happen. But we knew about this. So that's, emergency, yes. Again, I think, I just ponder that a bit, that it took this long and, kind of is what it is. So, also, you said you're doing a comp class study. How long does that take to do that?
The study and implementation of the study will be a year or longer process, I am told by HR.
And we haven't done one for 10 years is what you said?
That is correct.
And why haven't we done that earlier, knowing that we've got a problem?
I would not be in the best position to answer that question, sir.
I would like to just, if the committee doesn't mind, I would just like to have that question answered, just because I don't know about IT, but any of those, not sectors, but well, maybe it's a sector, but that you're having trouble with, those are the ones you want to really tighten up and keep those comp studies, class studies real fresh, because in a lot of our prior lives, we are not in sync with the market, and you start to bleed pretty fast, especially in government, knowing that we kind of prepare everybody to go to the private sector and make a lot more money. So that's where trying to keep that real tight is so important. And I just wonder why it took 10 years and we'll now have another year. So that worries me a little bit. Worries me not more than a little bit. Let's see. Are you hearing about others in government within our region or outside that are at the same place we are, that are having this problem, or have others managed it differently? And this will kind of have a couple follow-up questions as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm relatively new to the council. I joined during the
Welcome.
pandemic.
Yes, this is a fun item, right?
And come from a consulting and startup background, and just making the relationships with my peers in the state, but this is a hot topic.
Yeah.
I will say our challenge seems to be greater, and I suspect a contributing factor is our response to it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
for instance, we see other state agencies doing things like retention of strategies, compensation of market adjustments, things like that.
Okay, appreciate that.
Mhm.
And also because HR looks over the whole council, we've got other areas that we're having hiring problems, but we've been working on it a long time. And we've got strategies that this group has even put forward to try to mitigate the challenges in hiring. So I know we've got strategies in play and we're working very hard in other areas. Again, I'm just caught off guard while, we're on fire right now rather than trying to keep that smoldering thing in check. And so because this is about a 6-month fix and we're not doing outsourcing, at least under this declaration, and we still have problems with retention, have you tried to look out and really get us to some numbers that we think could be real in 6 months? Because I don't, this isn't gonna be probably solved in 6 months. So is there some pacing out there that you've, in 6 months from now will be 30% fixed, or I don't know what the right words would be, but
I have created some models, but those models I think are assumed on the strategies of organizations I've worked in the past, and so I would have a difficult time projecting with this kind of, with our response being
Yeah.
something we're still working out as an organization.
okay. Yeah, because the challenges to attracting talent isn't going away.
Mhm.
I really do appreciate that you're trying to bring in, you are bringing in diverse talent. That's really important. Again, I would, you know, from somebody who's been in government hiring, you know, for a while, outsourcing can be a very nasty word, especially for our, you know, labor members, union members. But, you know, I wouldn't put that too far off. I think what you get from that too is you get that security that if there's churn in those firms, they still owe us the work, right? So in an emergency situation, I think that would be something I would definitely wanna move up if we don't get to where we need to be pretty quick. And then, you know, is there a chance that we won't get out of this emergency situation in 6 months and we'll be back here on a continuing ratification of some sort?
I believe that I believe that this strategy to mitigate the emergency will no longer be required in 6 months, because in partnership with procurement, we will have a typical procurement process, you know, that's competitively solicited, et cetera, to supply this kind of staff augmentation. I'm not necessarily able to say that the underlying condition, I feel like this is a treatment of the symptom rather than the cause, if that makes sense.
No, I think
Will
that's
be
well
resolved,
said,
yes,
because that's
yeah.
what I've been thinking, I just didn't bring that phrase to mind, so I appreciate that, the candor on that.
Mhm.
And then the upping our recruiting game, HR, you know, bringing on a new dedicated IT person to recruit. So where are we getting this person from, and what experience and relationships do they have that we can, I guess, quite frankly, steal from other organizations? How good are they gonna be?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's kind of 2 phases to that person, right? Phase 1 is to bring in just a contract employee to do that recruiting. And right now, we're looking at several well-known recruiting firms at candidates, and those candidates all have 8 or more years of experience in the Twin Cities doing IT recruitment. So I feel very strongly that in our interim strategy will work well. The longer term strategy, I'm told it's about at least a 3-month process for us to hire somebody. And I can't speak to what the candidate pool will look like. It's not, I believe it is being posted now.
And we wouldn't just stay with a consultant to get us through this, this is actually gonna become a permanent full-time, because we think the problem's gonna go on for a long, long time.
I suspect it will take at least 2 years to, you know, we still have to turn the curve on loss rate, and then we have to probably fill, you know, 50 positions or more in that process.
And again, can you just speak to the wages that we pay, how far behind are we from market? I think you might have touched on it, but I was taking notes and I couldn't.
I think a comprehensive assessment would be necessary for when you provide a detailed opinion, but in my personal experience, probably our biggest challenges are to the middle degree of experience and senior level of experience. We're pretty competitive at entry level roles, and I would say our delta is between 10 and 30%.
And Councilmember Jacoby, the only, and are we restricted, I know we've got, we're restricted by salary caps at Met Council. Does
Correct.
that impact this? Is that one of the problems, or are we still under salary caps?
The salary caps impact roles like my position, but are not so much relevant for the positions except those directly under me, if that makes sense. I think a bigger challenge for us is we have grades that are an internally created concept, and a very high percentage of the IT staff fall into the maximum grade and are at the near maximum, but that's something we can adjust when we go through the
Yeah, I think
compensation study.
that would have been a strategy. I don't know, I'm not HR. I don't even, you know, I feel sorry that you have to go through this. I feel sorry for all of us. But I think those are the strategies that before we get to this moment, we should have been taking a look at. But I'll turn it over to Councilmember.
So I was going to actually ask a similar question if it was tied to the salary caps for state. Now, it seems to me that would be out there. We need cash. I mean, to hire IT folks, and the salaries are getting higher and higher. And is there a point that we go to the, I don't know who approves legislators, or they have a way to put a waiver for certain positions. Is there a point that we are gonna have a level either down or higher that would increase the compensation so we can compete? I just don't, I mean, if we wait till an individual comes and then apply for it, then I think we're behind already.
I think that's generally a challenge facing many agencies right now. In my case, I accepted a 30-40% reduction in salary to come here, and I think filling roles like mine can be challenging for those reasons with the quality candidates that the council deserves. But I think that is less impactful in my team for the majority of folks. That maybe applies to 2 to 3 positions in IS in the IT department here versus the majority, which are more in our control to adjust within the council.
The second thing is that a good friend of mine, actually, Eduardo Valencia, he heads the Airports Commission Technology Office. And prior to that, he ran the States. And so he's been very active. If you've met him already, great. And otherwise, I'd be more than happy to introduce you.
Yes, we've actually collaborated on reusing the system that the members of the council let me explain this. Sorry, we have a tool that lets people determine who their council member is. If that makes sense. The Airport Commission kind of used the same design as our tool to determine who their commissioners are. We do partner with them.
Okay, great questions. And I want to wrap it up because we've got this last item we need to get to today too. So, if we can just answer some of those questions that I pitched out, just so everybody on this body is in the know and whatever level the rest of the council can be in the know. And maybe afterwards too, I can just chat with you about this thing about why another item is coming before the council kind of last minute. That's what I call it. You guys have been dealing with it for over a year, obviously, but just how can we be more helpful in some sort of way before we get to this critical moment? And I would say too that even with salary caps, it impacts our top people, but there also then is the compression. Even if you adjust your categories, you start to compress and still everybody's gonna start slamming up against it, right? And so, that's a legislative issue, and if it's real and if it's in critical areas that involve safety, which a lot of the stuff we do here is, that would be good to know, because if it needs to get on a government affairs, legislative affairs agenda, I think we should approach that. I've been part of that before in getting the salary cap lifted for my community because we were having a hard time making sure we had a city manager and being able to do nationwide searches. So just something to think of.
Thank you.
Is there anything else for the council? Any other questions? All right. Yeah, I just want to check in on how HR is doing in general too. After the meeting, I'll do that privately. So with that, we do have a proposed action from the staff. We ratify the emergency declaration for IS staff augmentation services in an amount that will not exceed $3,999,999, dollar under $4 million. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Musse, seconded by Pacheco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That passes unanimously. So thank you for that very candid report and the good information that you provided, and go for it. Hire a bunch of people.
We'll do our best.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then I'll turn, at this point in time, we have an information item, and I'll turn to Councilmember Pacheco. He has a motion for us.
Yes, Madam Chair, I move to close this meeting under section 13D.03, subdivision 1 of the Minnesota Statutes, so we can consider a labor development and negotiation related to labor strategies.
There's been a motion to close the meeting. Is there a second? Second. And seconded by Barber. And I'll just mention here that the governing body of a public employer by majority vote in a public meeting may decide to hold a closed meeting under the provisions of section 13D.03, subdivision 1B of Minnesota Statutes. The discussion at